Hi. Since this is the first video in this series, I think a little history would be useful just to lay some initial foundation. Keep in mind that all of the dates will be coming straight from Wikipedia, so who knows how truly accurate all of the history here is. The rest outside of dates will be coming from my own memory, heard from various sources over the years that I have been interested in this particular game, since I have been interested in this particular game series. Now, any gematria experts out there, keep your ears perked up for some of the release dates here. I found some of them kind of interesting, but I'm not great with number language here. Here goes. So Earthbound is actually the second game in the series of 3 JRPGs, the original Japanese title for this series being the Mother series. The first game being called just Mother, the second Mother 2, and the third Mother 3. Mother was initially only ever released in Japan on July 27th, 1989 for the Famicom, which is basically just a Japanese model of the Nintendo Entertainment System. As far as I'm aware, Mother quickly became a cult classic in Japan, but was unfortunately not officially released or translated for English audiences until many, many years later, being dubbed Earthbound Beginnings. To all non-Japanese audiences, presumably due to the wide success and love that the original Mother received in Japan, a sequel was in the works, and a few years later on the next generation of consoles, Mother 2 was released in Japan on August 27th, 1994 for the Super Famicom, which was just the Japanese model of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And likely to nobody's surprise, Mother 2 was just as loved by the Japanese audience as Mother 1. In fact, it was probably even more so by many magnitudes. Possibly so much so that this time they actually translated and officially released the game to the US on June 5th, 1995 for the SNES. The game was retitled to Earthbound for the English release. But at least if the mainstream sources and explanations are to be believed, sales-wise, Earthbound failed horribly in the US, and by their explanation was due to a strange change in marketing for the US audience that was focused more on the bathroom humor occasionally presented in the game, and quoted in actual ads for the game, "This game stinks." Needless to say, initially Earthbound was not very popular or well known at all to the US audience, and was this way for many years and console generations later, but it eventually gathered a small but growing niche of fans in the English-speaking audience, likely around the time that SNES emulation and ROMs were becoming easily available to anyone with a PC. This is how I was personally first introduced to the game. My childhood friend and I were just getting into emulation, and I believe he mentioned something about Earthbound. And I eventually played it while I was still getting through high school, and I really loved it. Still do today, but with a completely different appreciation as I've progressed in my personal journey of understanding my true self. The last game in the Mother/Earthbound series is Mother 3. But I don't want to make this already way too long section even longer, and I'll save the strange history on that for if I ever get to making a series for that game specifically at some point. Just as a weird thing to keep in mind with this series' history is that only one title, that being Earthbound, was ever officially released alongside the Japanese release within a reasonable time. Mother 3 was never even officially translated to English and was released in Japan on April 20th, 2006, which just seems very strange to me in all honesty. With that way too long history out of the way, I want to first give a disclaimer before I continue. This series is going to have massive, gigantic spoilers for this entire game, and I highly recommend those watching play this game if they have even the slightest interest in playing Earthbound at some point. If you comment, I can even arrange slash, I could even arrange the show slash point you to how to emulate this game on your PC in barely a few clicks. So truly, if you have any inclination that you would eventually like to play this game yourself, do not continue in this series until you play the game yourself. It is much better of an experience not knowing all the plot elements and weird stuff along the way. But if you've gotten this far, I assume you have already played the game, or you have absolutely no intention of playing this game yourself, so I will continue without any regards for spoiling you after this point. So I'm going to be skipping past the initial sequence of the game when you first start a new file, as I could not interpret anything deeper from this initial sequence really, just a basic intro to the game. The only thing that really pops out to me is the fact that what falls on that night is a meteor. Now, I'm sure that means something to someone, but I personally don't have much I can discern from it right now. Once Ness, the main character, gets up the second time that night, that's where the interesting stuff starts to happen, and you're actually, given some kind of control and start doing the combat, the basic combat of the game and such, and stuff like that. And once you accomplish what you're going to do, which is find Pokey's brother Picky at the top of the hill where the meteor fell, is when it starts to get more interesting and where I'm going to be starting the first initial gameplay footage. And then once it gets through that part, I'm going to show the same gameplay footage, but this time I'm going to be commentating over it and pausing throughout and giving my personal interpretations of what is said, what happens throughout that sequence. So let's get to it. Alright, so right away, this is something that's personally interesting to me. It's more of a personal synchronicity than anything, specifically about bees, but I think right now I'm not going to get into that. I'll probably get into that some other time, but kind of interesting that Buzz is described as a bee, even though he specifically states he is not one. It's just kind of weird. But anyway, continue. And I also find it weird that he comes for the meteor, but, why does a beam of light why does a beam of light come? I mean, I don't know. That's kind of weird to me, but, maybe that means something. Who knows? And here when he says, sent to the horror of eternal darkness, and it's like, it's kind of vague. It's like, eternal darkness, what does that actually... that can mean different things to so many people. Or, like, to me, what would eternal darkness be? Like, literal darkness? Like the sun was blocked out? Mental darkness? Like, I could say almost that we have now in some ways. Like, the whole society is being just, like, mentally put a veil over or something like that. Or maybe just, in general, how it has been. It's very vague how he kind of describes that future, I guess. So that's something interesting as well. Now, this part is probably the most intriguing part about this, is like, he says, when the chosen boy reaches the point, or, a point, I don't know if that's just weird translation, he will find the light. And it's like, I mean, to me, in like a spiritual way, that says so much to so many different people, I would think. Like, you find your inner light, or you find the literal light, you find some God, you find some creator, you find something. It's just like, chosen boy reached the point, he will find the light. Well, like, to me, that's like, it's just saying when this boy or chosen person reaches some threshold or some point, he will find his true path, his light, or something like that. And he says that even a few seconds from now. Now, this part is interesting too. The passing of time will shatter the nightmare rock. Now, I'll say it right now that I think, I mean, maybe it's obvious, but to me that's just literally what you get in a few moments after you meet him. You get something called the Soundstone. And to me, that's what I think the nightmare rock literally is. And the much symbolism or whatever that goes with that, I'll explain later on in a different episode. But that's very interesting that in their prophecy or whatever that it mentions that, and specifically called a nightmare rock. Nightmare anything is interesting, and will reveal the path of light. Path of inner light, the path of your true self, whatever. And maybe I'm reading too much into this too. You may have time to counter the evil intentions of Gygas. And it's like, I don't know. To me, it would be like, to counter the evil actions of Gygas, the evil plans of Gygas, but the evil intentions, that almost to me says like, that it's not even about what Gygas is doing per se, but just the intentions, the intention of harm alone is the real danger. And this part as well, it's like pretty obviously that this is not like, I mean, maybe you could look at that in any game as like, a character's, or any RPGs, a character's like spiritual journey, not just their physical journey, whatever that they're going on. And I would say almost anybody would say that some of the most important things are wisdom, depending on how you define that. I would think like your own overall experience, or something of those ways to learn from what you've gone through, or something around those lines. Like, that's how I would kind of see wisdom as, like,
almost your intuition, sort of like your inner knowing kind of deal. Courage, obviously, being able to face your fears or have no fears, know that you shouldn't have any fears. Obviously, that's always, in any hero story, that's always a thing. And then friendship, it's like, maybe depending on what you see as that, it's just, I guess, an interconnectedness with everybody in some way. That's how I would see friendship as kind of deal. And, obviously we need others along our path to grow kind of thing. We need others along our path, not just ourselves, but others to help along that way in our journey. And do not be anxious about the future. I mean, I feel like that's what I've sort of been doing, and I've stopped caring about time in general, kind of thing. And almost that, it like kind of speaks to that. It's like, don't be anxious about the future. Don't be anxious about the past or the present or anything. Just don't be anxious about anything, but don't be anxious about the future. It's kind of could be viewed as something so like, oh, that's just so generic. But I don't know. That's something that speaks to me. Like, don't be anxious about time at all. Don't be anxious about what's going to happen or what might happen, because it's not something, as far as we know, time could be completely non-existent kind of thing. Like, it just, there is no time as far as we really know. You have much work to do, Ness, which we all do. And now we'll go to the next part of the section with Buzz, and will be the final meeting with Buzz, unfortunately. See you then. First off, so we know that Buzz is not a bee, because at least he says that himself. So, if we're to believe him, he's not a bee. So what is he? He's some kind of insect. And what Pokey's mother says here is she at least refers to him as a dung beetle or some sort, or some kind of beetle. Now, I know that at some point when I was watching videos about this character from somebody else like years ago, somehow they came to the conclusion that what he is a stag beetle. And I'm not really sure how they came to that conclusion. I couldn't really find the video again, but maybe in Japanese, or maybe in Japan, he was referred to as stag beetle instead of a dung beetle by her, or something like that. Somehow this guy came to that conclusion, and that's the only really thing that I could come to, is that he's some kind of beetle, and I'm going to go with stag beetle because of that. And just doing some surface level, quote unquote, research on Wikipedia. When I looked up a stag beetle, it said something interesting about its, I guess, the history of some people, some tribes or something like that used to refer to stag beetles, or did refer to stag beetles as devil's imp, or devil's imps, or something like that. And I'm like, I found that interesting when I was doing quote unquote research into this. And I was like, it made me think of Christoph's talk about possibly what we think of as heaven and hell and God and Satan. Satan, I would think would just be also the devil. And it made me think, like, maybe that's what this is. And then later on, there's also literally the game says something about devil, but much farther into the game. But I find that interesting because that makes me think, like, maybe it's the inversion almost. Like, if, say, Buzz, let's just say, for this example, let's say Buzz is the imp of Satan, or some kind of familiar of Satan sent to give this prophecy to Ness or whatever. And some would say that, oh, that means it's doing evil or something like that, or it's trying to harm him or whatever. But then it's like, well, if it's the inversion and Satan is actually not what he's, is not it's not the evil version of a deity or whatever, of a entity, it's actually the opposite, then Buzz is an angel or something, like, a familiar of divinity or God, or, the opposite of bad or something like that. That's just, probably reading way too much into it, but I think it's weird that somebody found out through their interpretation somehow that Buzz is not a bee, as he says so, but he is a stag beetle. And what a stag beetle supposedly is a devil's imp in some places from somewhere. So, first, that's kind of weird, but also something to note. Alright. To defeat Gyges, your own power must unite with the Earth's. Now, it's from the context of, if this was not Earthbound and this was Mother 2, which is just the Japanese version of this, is, I believe in Mother 1, well, for one, in the title, the O of Mother is actually the Earth. That's, instead of an O, it's just the shape of the Earth. It's got, the Earth itself. So to me, that almost says, like, it's not so much about the mother as in, like, who birthed somebody, like a female birthing a child, but Mother Earth, as many people refer to as the Earth as Mother Earth. And in this context, at least with this game, I would think in Mother 2, this would make more sense, because Ness is using, or at least whatever, the Soundstone is recording these. I shouldn't get into that. I should get into that later. But just for all intents and purposes, must unite with the Earth's. And, you know, I believe that this simulation, whatever we're in, this life that we're in, I believe we have to use the experience here or the energy here or whatever to do something with it for our spiritual selves, for our true selves. I believe it's not just a Sims game. We're just doing it for fun or whatever. I believe we're here for some reason. The simulation is here for some reason. And I believe the Earth is a very important part of that. Obviously that's where we reside on. This is what we call this realm in a way, the Earth. And in this case, Ness is being told that yes, you have to combine your powers. His energy must unite with the Earth to make something greater, or make him greater in some way, or empower him in some way. The Earth will then channel your power and multiply it. And yeah, pretty much what I just said is like, we, him, all of us, whatever spiritual beings, have to use this realm, the energy itself, and multiply our own already, at least as far as we can see, as far as we know, our massive energy or whatever, our massive power, and then using the Earth to increase it, multiply it, or whatever, exponentially. I don't know. What numbers are we talking about here? It's unfathomable, kind of like exponential values and stuff like that. It's unfathomable, and that's kind of what I see from what he's saying here. 8 points that you must visit. Make these places your own. Now, once again, I don't know about gematria, but 8, it doesn't really speak to me, but interesting, something, I don't know. But make these places your own, your sanctuary locations. The first one is called Giant Step, and we'll talk about that in another video. And now he gives you the Soundstone, which, once again, it's a very important item in this quest of his. And I'm going to talk about it more later, as I've said. But initially it's there as a cassette almost, where it records these melodies that you find at your sanctuary locations. Alright, so after that long video, probably, I didn't expect it to be this long, but hey, some people might like that, I guess. This is the end of the first video in this series, and I think it's gone better than I expected, honestly, which is good. There's a lot of editing that kind of went through, and, not the best editing, I guess, but mostly is alright audio-wise. Video-wise, looks a little bit weird with some of the cuts, but hey, what are you gonna do? It's a lot better than having me stumble on my words for 20 seconds straight trying to search for something to say, trying to search for a word or something. And basically, I just wanted to say thank you for watching, and I hope to release the next video within a few days of this one, hopefully. I assume it should get easier from here, since I kind of know the workflow now. So, hopefully you liked it, and see you next time.